Welcome to the next episode of Bones and Stones. And as you can see, some of us are feeling quite chilly this morning, but I'm pretty sure this conversation is going to warm us up. Okay, sorry. Two guests on today's show. It's a little bit different. We have Mariette Pepler-Harcombe with us and Kelita Shadrach, who is the chairperson and the secretary of the Southern African Archaeological Student Council. And we're going to just have a little chat to them about the Student Council, about where it's going, about what it's got planned, what's it's got up its sleeve, maybe hear even a few sort of secrets about what the council is going to be doing in the next few months, something they haven't announced yet, who knows. But to kick things off for people who don't really know too much about the Student Council, Mariette, as the chairperson, could you just give us a bit of a background and introduction to what you guys do, what you've done, and what, sort of what the Student Council is?
Yeah, cool stuff, Tim. The South African Archaeological Student Council was founded back in 2013, if I recall correctly, by Matt and Tim. So big ups to the founding fathers of the student organization. So the Student Council has been focused on presenting annual student development workshops, which has been catered towards providing enrichment opportunities to students who, from different universities who don't necessarily always have contact with each other. In the past, it's always been a very, my university versus your university kind of thing. And, students don't really interact. So first and foremostly, the student development workshops is kind of like an arena that's open to everyone, where everyone can come together. And it's students from different organizations, and over the years, also more and more students from across the SADC region, and not just from in South Africa, to come together and talk about different issues, enjoy the different lectures that are being presented and practical activities. And, a lot of the content, sometimes it's topics that we cover at a university basis, but, there's always more. There's always this little bit extra, archaeology is a field that develops constantly. So there's always something, there's something new to learn. So it's just keeping students in the loop and, giving them additional enrichment opportunities.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I probably should have mentioned that Lotte and I were involved at the start of this. So we have a little bit of a conflict of interest here. But yeah, no, so it was a bit of a fun ride. So I think, in terms of how it began and what it achieved, certainly the council and the workshop has taken great strides. And now you guys are talking about doing something new and changing things up slightly. Kelita, could you just sort of maybe mention a little bit about what you guys are thinking of doing over the coming months in terms of change?
Yeah, definitely. And before I get into that, obviously, I'd just like to thank Bones and Stones for hosting this amazing video. So over the past few months, I think not just us as researchers, but the whole entire world has sort of had to rethink how we operate and how we view information and how we receive information, from corporate environments to obviously the academic environments. And so with COVID, we realized having a workshop is just not necessarily something we can do at the moment, but it is something we're very much committed to doing, and something that we've done in the past, of course, as Mariette explained. And we thought this would actually be an amazing opportunity to just sit down and say, this is what we've done, this is how far we've come, what's really the next step, what's the next milestone, how do we evolve a little bit as a organization. And so naturally, the digital age has become something, or just the digital environment has become something we've all become really dependent on. And so I guess now I do the announcement. Yay, we are now going into the digital age. And we're actually, we did have a website previously, but we are announcing and coming out as a new SASC rebranding websites, basically, that is founded on interaction between the archaeological community, so that includes researchers and academics, as well as students and the public. And although we did have a website previously, like I said, this website is based on the maximum interaction we can provide for students. And that's also provided in multiple platforms being involved. So even though we're starting a new website, we're rebranding, we're filled with a whole lot of new ideas that are going to be different for our audience. Platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, they're all going to remain linked to the website, and all the information you can find on those on the website, you'll be able to find on that, on those other social platforms. And so we're actually trying to stay more connected, but also develop a place students or the public can go to and read about what's really going on in Southern Africa and what students are partaking in. Maybe even read some of the past presentations students have given, look at some of the workshops we've gone to, and just really push forward as well. And we do have a really cool initiative we're going to start on the website, which is SaskE. Mariette, I know you founded that name, so maybe if you want to, yeah, if you want to describe what we're going to do with that with regards to actual content.
Sure. So the idea actually came about to get a bit more proactive in terms of e-learning. Now, interestingly, I studied archaeology and ancient Near Eastern culture for many years, but to put food on the table, I'm working for a technology company called Fifth Dimension Technologies. And we do training simulators mainly for the mining industry. So the company does the programming side of things, so they create the software and do the development, but then they also build the actual physical simulators. So it's quite impressive to see these simulators in action, because you've got a motion base of this huge dump truck and you're sitting there and you're driving in the simulated environment. But before you get to all the cool stuff, you go through an e-learning, system, e-learning course for each vehicle. And I'm working now with Adobe Captivate, which is a really nice platform to create interactive e-learning content. So the idea is to have, let's say, lectures online on the website that students can watch, and then also have kind of like a Q&A session to go along with that, kind of like similar to what we're doing now. You'd have a presenter talk about their work, you'd have a panel interacting with them with a Q&A session, but then they can also click a link in the description of the video, which takes them to online learning, like a little short course. Just a Q&A where you can see, student interaction with the subject matter, and you can get some actual feedback from students as well about how their personal experience with the lecture content. And then all kinds of, enrichment content on the website as well. It's not just that, but, having templates, for example, for students. I mean, a lot of students go to their first conference and they're told, do a poster, but there's no template. There's no sharing of ideas between students, because students often feel that I can't share my ideas with my fellow student because then they steal my ideas. And they're sometimes too shy to ask a lecturer because they don't want to seem like they don't know what they're doing. So from our point, we like to share our knowledge. I mean, put a template for a poster up. The students can go and edit it, give it their own creative spin. Myself coming from an editing background as well, having something as simple as a Word document tutorial, that has all the styles embedded in the document, and, basic guidelines on how long your introduction should be, what your abstract should contain, keywords, basic stuff like that. Resources that are of practical use to students, we'd like to share on our website.
Mariette, that sounds awesome. Thanks very much, and to Kelita as well. It's great to have you guys on and stuff, and to hear what Council is doing from our humble beginnings and how things are changing and stuff, and how you guys are also adapting and reacting to the current situation. It's great to see that you guys are, kind of thinking on your toes and stuff. And I suppose we're all having to do it at the moment. But maybe if I could carry on with that theme, and you mentioned the STW, and obviously the STW has always been such an important component of the Student Council. Could we maybe see the format of that now changing, moving forward into the future? What are your guys' plans with the STWs?
Sure, Mariette, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
I think, sorry guys.
Sorry,
I think
that was my fault. I should have actually directed it to one of you first, and then said, but I didn't know
that's
who
okay.
would take the question. So yeah, so Mariette, if you want to go for it first, Mariette, and then Kelita.
Yeah, cool. So I don't think that the SDWs is something that's going to change fundamentally. I think it's still essential that we meet physically, and especially with practical activities that are so essential to an SDW, you want to have students and you want to guide them and show them practical stuff. But the wonderful thing about that is now once you go digital, is that you can open up all of the content and activities of the SDW simply by recording a lecture and getting it on the website as soon as possible. I mean, you can even involve students in the Q&A sessions of a particular lecture just by posting the content and saying, okay, well, here's a Google sheet, here's a Google form. Quickly go and, fill in your comments, give us feedback. And I mean, within the time frame of that SDW, you can have so much interaction with students who aren't physically at the workshop. I mean, it's really the possibilities now. If you really just think outside of that box and start thinking in terms of e-learning and digital interactions, I think we can do a lot of great work. So, Kelita, do you want to add to that, perhaps?
Yeah, I think that the workshop, so SDW, for anyone watching this that's missed it earlier on in the video, is student development workshop. And I think, so what it's really meant for students is, one, it's not biased towards where you're from necessarily. And those workshops have allowed students from, I think at this point, we've had over 7 countries represented. Students have been allowed to basically send in a motivation letter, and we've been able to say, wow, this is really amazing. And, really managed to get, with wonderful sponsors, by the way, including PAST, the Paleontological Scientific Trust, we've managed to bring students from all over Africa and in other countries in the world as well. And so that's obviously not something physically we were able to do necessarily this year, but that's the awesome thing about hosting some workshops sorry about the lighting, by the way. That's the awesome thing about hosting something online, is that we do actually open ourselves to a much broader audience. Again, unfortunately, not everyone's going to be able to access the internet all the time, and we realize that, and that's why moving forward there will be, following safety protocols, there will definitely be workshops when we can provide them. But for now, I think creating workshops online, as Mariette described, is something we definitely want to normalize. It's something that we can do and produce, and that can be beneficial for the archaeological community and students, and then still have personal or workshops where we're in person. We can socialize, we can really get to know one another, and we can get experience in presenting as well. So I think combining both of these new realities basically is what we're attempting to do. So I don't think it'll change, but for the best, I think.
All right. Well, thank you very much. This is really fascinating topic of discussion. So my question for both of you is, over the last couple of months, we've seen a lot of international conferences sort of almost going digital or trying to integrate digital practices. And this is exactly what you guys are sort of developing, but taking it to a next level is what I would say, with the addition of online content, and which is really fantastic. Do you think that this is going to be the new way? That conferences will probably try to expand their sort of reach in the same respect, and that traveling halfway across the world to go to an important international conference will maybe be a thing of the past in some soon future.
I'm okay. I've already started talking, so I'm just going to answer. I think I think organizations are going to consider the new potential of including digital conferences or webinars as a part of main conferences. But I'm going to just be honest, a huge part of conferences is that you know, having people fly across the world and attend them does provide a lot of money for those events to be honest, sorry. And so I do think if going in a more digital route is financially beneficial, I think it would definitely be an option. But I know for a lot of these organizations, a lot of planning goes into conferences, a lot of money is spent and a lot of time is spent. And so they do need to, I think, see how they can benefit from a digital platform more tangibly, I think, personally. But it would be nice. It would be very nice. But practically, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it brings in other issues as well of carbon footprints. These are things we need to think about as well, our environment and so on. And this kind of approach also starts to limit that. And like you say, money. I mean, you know, especially, you know, if we're talking about African countries like ourselves and coming from African research institutions, we often don't have as much financial resources as many other people have in other parts of the world. Where suddenly, you know, if we're online, it makes these things a lot more accessible to people, you know, to a lot of people in places of the world that we come from. So there's a lot of benefits and there's a lot of negatives. You know, having a beer after a long day in a conference with your colleagues and with new people that you've met is great. I mean, and often that kind of network.
Nothing beats that.
Yeah, you know, so we don't want to lose that entirely. So it's this interesting sort of melting pot at the moment of, you know, what gets kept and what gets thrown out. But guys, thanks very much. I just sort of to wrap it up. I think I might not be speaking on behalf of Lotte here, but when we started this thing, it was kind of innovative. It was proactive. It was something we had identified as a niche in our industry that we thought we could sort of, you know, make a difference in a way, you know, even if it's just a small way. And I think that those values have just continued. And what we've discussed today just shows that the student council is thinking of new ways of interacting, in new ways of representing itself, in new ways of approaching our field, which is great. And it's nice to see that hasn't changed. But thanks very much for coming on. We look forward to seeing what happens. I know Lotte and I have been part of a bit of the conversation as well. It's very exciting. I think people will find it exciting, and it's going to be new ways of interacting and bringing in a bigger audience, as you mentioned. And that's going to be great. So thanks. We look forward to it. Hopefully it's all going to be up and running soon. And hopefully some of our listeners will be able to benefit from this too. Stay warm today, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.